All right, Kiss Army, welcome to the KissFAQ Podcast. Thank you for giving us your time today and letting us into your head. I hope we don't do any damage. We hope that you enjoy. Welcome to episode 383 of the KissFAQ Podcast. I'm your host, Julian Gill. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest, Christopher Borgars from Sweden, who has recently released a tribute album to music from the Elder, and this is Ancient Door, a project which has been released exactly at the right time, celebrating the 40th anniversary of that fantastic album. While I'm regurgitating interviews and whatnot from the NovElder book and Odyssey book, this is something new, something fresh. So, Christopher, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show.
So let's get into the background of you as a Kiss fan, first of all, before we talk about taking on performing a tribute to what is a very divisive album in Kiss fan circles. When did you become a fan? And tell us about your first interactions with music from the Elder as well.
My first piece of music that I got from Kiss was a cassette copy from a friend of Lick It Up album when that was released, so in '83, and I loved it from the get-go. It was a fantastic experience hearing that. I loved every minute of it, so I became an instant fan of the band. You know, all Christmas the list was full of Kiss stuff. You know, give me albums, I want them. So it was all Kiss from that. My first interaction with the Elder was back in '85 when I went on a school trip to Oslo in Norway, and I got a copy of it. So '85 was my first meeting with that fantastic piece of music.
So you became a fan with Lick It Up. It must have been a little bit of a shock to the system when you first heard music from the Elder, with it being, quite vastly different stylistically to the rest of the catalog. What was your reaction to hearing it for the first time?
A bit baffled I was, I think. Of course, they had Oath as the first track. So you still had the heavy guitars. My first impression was, oh, cool, heavy guitars. Then, of course, the falsetto vocals in the chorus was a bit, wow, what's this? And, of course, when going into Fanfare and the massive choir on Under the Rose, I think it was interesting. I liked it, but I really couldn't, wow, is this really a normal Kiss album? But at the same time, I didn't know anything about the project, so I thought, maybe there's a movie out there and this is the soundtrack, which would be, that blew my mind. So this is way before internet and everything. And being brought up in a small one-horse town in Sweden, 5,000 people, you didn't know anything about Kiss or what they've done or what they were up to or anything. So, for me, it was just mind-blowing.
Right. So on this tribute to music from the Elder, you play the majority of the instruments on the album, and you've got a partner, Jolene Fredrickson, who contributes percussion, bass, backing vocals, and some guitars. What was it about meeting Jolene that kind of provided the catalyst to recording this project? Because I've been watching your videos, your behind the scene videos, and you said that musically it wasn't really until you met Jolene that this became possible. So tell us about the genesis, how this project started and how it started on the road to becoming reality.
Well, we have to go way back because, when I first got my first guitar, which was, I think in 85, somewhere around that, I got the sheet music for Alive 2. So I learned a couple of songs. The chords for Calling Dr. Love and I Want You and other songs. But the first song that I actually learned and played with my friends was Escape from the Island. So it was the first real guitar riff that I actually learned, and we played that, we beat the hell out of that song, I have to say. Not the best version out there, I have to admit. But
no, but it's fun to play, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a cool song, and so I played that, and then a couple of years later, when I went to high school, music high school, studying music, I actually wanted to, because we had a studio on campus, and I really wanted to record something. I thought about recording a couple of the songs, and maybe I should, record a couple of the songs. But I really didn't know how to work the studio, and I didn't have enough friends who were interested in the project, so it kind of it didn't happen then. And then the idea has been with me for years and years, and I worked in studios, and I've had friends, and I've toyed with the idea. But it wasn't until I met Jolene that actually, because she plays a lot of instruments, I try to play a lot of instruments. Between us, we could actually record this. I realized, and she's a fantastic musician and a great producer and technician too in the studio. So we had other musical projects first, live projects. But then I said, my dream project is the Elder, and she said, cool, do it. And I said, I want you to be part of it. Sure. And then we had it was a bit of an uphill struggle, for a couple of years. She has a bad back, so she couldn't play drums for a while. So our initial thought was doing it for the 35-year anniversary, not the 40th. But we were set back a few times, but then we aimed for the 40th anniversary. So I'm happy to be here now.
Yeah, we're happy for you to be here now as well. I must say, one of the things that struck me watching those behind-the-scene videos was the passion that's evident with both of you. Whether it was she giving us a treat of working with the percussive elements and the drums, when they were being recorded, or you talking about the vocals or the guitars or those elements. So I find those videos to be very valuable supporting elements that let us meet the characters, behind this. When you started and committed to this project, what was your goal for it? Was it just to do a re-record the Elder your way, or did you have a mission that you want to accomplish with doing so?
Well, I think it started with me just wanting to get into the music of the album, knowing every chord and everything about the music. I wanted to know every bit of it, so I wanted to learn every song. And I didn't really see any point in trying to get together a live band and performing it just once or twice, because let's face it, there's not a huge audience for live performances of the Elder out there, I guess. And so for me, it was pretty natural thinking, okay, I want to do something in the studio with this. And I want to learn the songs the way they were written and performed by Kiss. But there's no point in releasing just a carbon copy of that album, because it's perfect the way it is to me. So I think first I learned the album the way it was written, and then I kind of looked at it as, imagine that the original are the demos from Kiss, and I got, here are the demos, do what you want with them, toy around with them. So that was kind of my approach to the whole project. To pay respect to the original, but at the same time bring something new to each and every track.
Yeah, and that you certainly do, and we'll talk about some of the elements that jumped out at me when listening to it. But you're a trained musician. Did you get a hold of the sheet music for the album, and how did you kind of reverse engineer what is some very complex sounds, instruments, and of course Bob Ezrin's production?
By ear, actually. I do have the Japanese sheet music book from '94, I think it is, but it's not that great, to be honest. Kind of like not as bad as the lyric sheet for the Japanese edition, no, about horses and whatnot. No, I learned the album by ear, actually, and as you say, reversed engineered it. Trying to figure out little bits like the reverse reverb going into the vocals of Only You and stuff like that. You have to figure it out. But I've been working in studios for almost 30 years now, and the same with Jolene. So we know a few tricks, hopefully. So, but it was we loved every minute of it. It's so fun sitting down with the track and trying to figure out what kind of magic tricks Bob used to bring out the magic of the song. So loved it.
That was one of the parts of Tim's interviews with the various engineers and studio personnel, talking about some of the little tricks that they would use, like phasing and mics and all of these selections, which in an analog world of 1981 are vastly different to perhaps how we record nowadays. But just those the technical details that he was able to ask them, I always found fascinating. But also to hear you now talk about, going back and doing it by ear, I just find stunning. How do you reverse engineer a crumhorn, or some obscure medieval instruments? I mean, because it seems that you have a lot of different instruments being played. Are they all real instruments, or did you go to keyboards and some of the more, I guess, modern approach to doing those elements?
Well, we're currently working as writers and producers of music for TV and stuff like that. So we work a lot with sample libraries, with orchestral sample libraries in our everyday work. So that's one of the things that made this, I think the timing was right now, not 5 years ago, because we learned so much about orchestral instrumentation and everything the last 4 or 5 years. So it was perfect for us now to work with, because with modern equipment, they're all actually instruments, but you play them with the keyboard. Of course, I don't have the budget to hire 100 plus classical.
Hello,
players.
I need a harp for 8 hours.
Yeah, exactly. So, but it's like a song like Odyssey, which is quite complex with a lot of instruments. It's not like we played the whole section of strings like a keyboard chord. No, we played each instrument by itself. Here's the violin harmony, here's the viola harmony, here's the cello harmony. So there's a lot of channels on a track like that, close to 100, I think, on that one. So there's a lot of work behind it.
And getting that balance right as well. I mean, getting the instrumentation is one thing, but balancing it so it makes sense. What I do find is that the sound of, you've mentioned Odyssey, very organic. It sounds beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous. The balance between all of those elements, they sing out at the right time individually. So you're hearing those voices, but it's just absolutely spectacular. And again, I'll tell people, watch those behind the scenes videos that Christopher has put together, because when you see the amount of tracks and how all those elements come together, it gives you a new appreciation of the creative process. So how did you approach recording this? Did you go in order? And if not, which was the first song that you recorded?
The first song, we didn't go in order. The first song we recorded was Just a Boy.
Great choice.
And I think it's a key track to the album. So I have my favorite tracks, and some I wanted to save for later, like Only You. I think it's another key track of the album, probably the most diverse track. It goes from just a few guitars and vocals, very soft, to a pretty rough song, So and also Odyssey. So I saved them for later, but I thought that Just a Boy was a good start. It's a key song for the album, and so we pretty much had like 95% of that recorded, finished in, I think, 2016. So I had some rough mix of it, and then a very scaled down video made of it as early as, I think, Christmas 2016.
Wow.
So that was the first track, and then we did bits and pieces, and then Jolene had back problems, so we had to take a break for a year or something like that. And when, of course, you learn new stuff, and I went back, like a song like A World Without Heroes. We actually recorded about 85% of that song in 2016 too. Then I went back to 2020 and reviewed it and said, no, this is not where I want to go now. Let's redo it. So we
Right.
redid almost everything on it.
Well, you've mentioned one of the standouts for me is Just a Boy. And that's absolutely gorgeous. I love Paul's performance on the original. I love everything that Bob Ezrin did, but you've brought something new to that. I think the counterbalance of Jolene's classical guitar in there just makes it so much more dynamic and lets you appreciate it as a song more. But your electric solo, I had a picture in my head of David Gilmour playing that solo.
Wow.
Just the phrasing for me and my ear and my brain was that remains the mystery guitarist for me on this album. I don't know who did that solo for certain. If that's Paul Stanley, that's incredible. If it's someone else, and there's still a question of whether that is a ghost performer on the Kiss version, it's one of those things still to be discovered. But your take on this was absolutely amazing. How
Well,
did you
thank you.
approach a solo like that? What was the balance between playing what was performed and also taking that artistic liberty that naturally comes from performing it?
Well, I think that the solos, I had the same approach as the songs. I think the solos are probably the best guitar playing of all Kiss records when it comes to solos. On this album, you have a lot of fantastic solos. Just a Boy, Under the Rose is my favorite. Odyssey, beautiful, beautiful solos. So you don't want to stray too far from the original. But at the same time, you need to bring something new, kind of a new element to everything, I think. Well, otherwise you're doing a pale copy of the original. I don't want to do that. I think my approach, and the fact that you mentioned Gilmour, I think somewhere back in the back of my head, I was thinking, I wish David Gilmour could play this solo, because that would be the match made in heaven. So my approach was, I think, bringing as much. It's not a technical solo, but you have to find the right amount of feel. There's a little bit of feedback on the guitar, which gives it an extra, sustain to some of the longer notes, which I love, which is an accident, but I liked it, so I kept it. But it's hard to play those solos because I love them so much, and it's really hard to approach it without. I have a lot of respect for the original ones, so it's tough, but I hope I got it halfway right, at least.
I think the respect for the art comes across in what you've done with it, that where the artistic, your individuality comes into the performance, you still stay very true to it. So it's got your fingerprint on this album, but it's not smudging Kiss's original.
No.
And again, just to finish up on the David Gilmour point, I think that's the one where now I'm thinking that's a direct link to The Wall and Ezrin's previous work, because David was very much doing that type of performance on some of his strongest guitar work on The Wall.
I agree.
We've talked about the classical guitars. You also use mandolins, but what were some of the guitars that you use, say, on a track or on that solo in particular? What are your tools that you like playing the most for this album?
You mean the brands?
Well, yeah. What sorts of, are you playing? Strats, Tellies, Les Pauls, Yamaha?
I'm not sure if the classical guitar is Yamaha or if it's Jolene's guitars. I really don't know. She does an amazing job on that one. But the guitar solo on Just a Boy is a Swiss Strat called Blade, kind of a high-end brand by Gary Levinson. A fantastic guitar. Looks like a Strat. Has a few extra things on it, but it basically a Strat. So I think I play that one. I'm not sure, but I think it's that one that I played a solo on, and also the rhythm guitars. I use a lot of guitars actually on the album. Telecasters. I have a hand-built Telecaster. I don't know if I can show it here. Made by a guy here in my hometown. Beautiful piece of instrument. Also, of course, I had to have my Paul Stanley guitar
Of course.
in there. So I think the Paul Stanley guitar, the Ibanez, is on The Oath and I,
Oh, yeah, it has
which
to
are
be.
the two tracks that are tuned down half a key, which they normally do on every song with Kiss. That's one thing that's also special with this album, that they have the normal tuning standard with E instead of E flat on a lot of songs. So I used a lot of guitars. One significant difference in one solo is Under the Rose, where I used a Gem Ibanez, the Steve Vai version.
Okay, that totally answers that question,
Yeah,
which was coming later
just to get the
because
whammy bar.
there was something in the tone that I was like, that's a gem. I just saw Vi in my head again. You know, with some of the guitar sounds, you're like, you get the flavor of where they're coming from. That's why I asked about the specifics of guitars. I don't speak the language that well. I play in standard or drop, and that's it. And I'm not trained, and I'm garbage, but I do it for fun and entertainment. But it's always nice for you to hold up the guitars and say and explain some of, you know, the why you use a different tool for a different song, because it's an important part of the story to me, because again, it's the music.
And the Telecaster has a kind of nice backstory. That I read that Ace Frehley actually used that on a lot of the early recordings with Kiss, which normally isn't a guitar that you never think of Kiss and Telecasters together, but it has a very good bite to it. So the string is very obvious, and when you hit a note, it's a good attack to it. So that's why I wanted to use it. So I used the Telecaster, for example, on the intro guitars of Only You, which needs that choppy, edgy sound. So guitars matter a lot, what kind of guitar you use for what song you have, So I used a lot. I have some Les Paul. I think I played a solo on Odyssey with a Les Paul.
Right.
So a lot of different guitars.
So I'm going way out of order of my notes. So I want to go back to the beginning and your transformation of Fanfare. Fanfare, of course, is an oral montage that kind of sets the tone, but you've made it grand and cinematic. It's now sounds way more like the character of Destroyer's opening sound montage, which is, again, very cinematic as well, rather than muted and subdued and mysterious on the Bob Ezrin production. So you kind of changed the mood slightly with how you've approached it with its clarity. Was that an enhancement that just came to mind when you started working on it? Did that just happen naturally, or did you have a vision that intro needed to be bigger and you had a different vision for how that would sound?
Well, I wanted the entire album to be a little bit more cinematic in its style. So my vision of Fanfare was, the approach was like a movie trailer for the movie that was never made. But I can't take credit for that because that's all Jolene. I basically told her, this is the original. Make it a movie trailer, because she's the movie trailer person of the two of us. She works with that every week, writing movie trailers. So she did an amazing job with it. I basically told her, this is my vision. I would love something like that. And she said, well, it doesn't really lend itself to a classical movie trailer, but I'll give it a go. And I loved it. And as you say, I really think that it set the tone for the rest of the album. And I wanted it to be more cinematic, so I also brought a little more orchestral flavor to songs like Only You, and The Oath also has some horns and stuff like that. Very, very discreet, but just to keep it in the same universe musically. So
Right.
yeah, there's a thought behind it.
It's a very broad universe, and I think that perspective, getting a bit of echo, that perspective that Jolene puts in making it cinematic really changes it, transforms it. So I'm fascinated to hear that backstory of her approach to it, because that really comes across. It's great to hear a translation of a piece of music into something completely different. The embellishment that you brought to different songs, is particularly noted by the orchestration. And you've already mentioned the amount of tracks that go into, doing Odyssey, nearly 100 tracks overall. But it must have been an Odyssey just charting that. Did you chart out that orchestra, from knowing how many pieces Bob originally used for that?
I actually sat down with the original to try to find every little piece of music that's in there, trying to reverse engineer the entire arrangement. So I did a MIDI arrangement with MIDI instruments, a fake orchestra, every single note that I could actually find on it. And I took that and I kind of, morphed it into something. So I changed a few notes here and there because I wanted to implement the da 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 da, that fourth musical language, but sure, that's the theme of the album. So that's in the outro of Odyssey. We get a lot more of that, so it ties it together, because I moved Odyssey to at the back of the album later in the story. So I want to go back to that theme. So you have Fanfare in the beginning, and you have Odyssey as the second last song, with still using that theme in it. So little bits and pieces that you glue together to make it like a more comprehensive story musically.
And also a story with a beginning and an end, because those dynamic themes echo beginning and end. So very good use of that. But you also use some very, actually just a quick side story on the orchestra. I am still trying to reverse engineer the orchestra list, because I've got a list of everyone who played in the orchestra in 1981. And it's massive.
Wow.
The problem with these players is they all play multiple disciplines. So you've got wind and brass mixed in together, and figuring out which one did what on that particular occasion is a nightmare. So I never did get that completed, but a lot of people played. So no wonder you did 100 tracks. But you also have some modern taste in here, and your riffing in Under the Rose jumps out at me. Again, that's a very kind of modern style. How does the song tell you where it's going in terms of what it wants from you as the performer?
Oh, that's a tough one. That's a tough question. What I really didn't want to, the road I really didn't want to go down is to kind of date the album by making it too modern or too much 2021, So I don't want to be contemporary, and I don't want to be, too old, being like the original, more vintage in style. So I try to mix it up. The riffing, I think it just came from me noodling around with the track, playing guitar to the basic track, finding. I think the song that was hard, the two songs that were hardest to do something with, and for different reasons, were which I think pretty much it's a rock song. There's not much you can add to that, and it's a fairly long song as it is, so that I couldn't really, change it around too much. But the hardest song for me was Under the Rose, because I loved the original so much. I wouldn't want to change anything really on it. But a little riffing, I put a little riffing in there. Of course, I not changed, but I played the solo with a bit of different approach with the whammy bars, but I think it came fairly natural, just noodling around on guitar, finding bits and pieces that I thought, this, I threw a lot away. To you try ideas and say, I'm not going to get away with that.
Delete.
Delete.
We'll not talk about that effort again.
No.
Does it give you a new appreciation of some of the players as musicians? Paul Stanley, obviously, Ace Frehley, Eric Carr, Alan Schwartzberg, who came in to do some of the drumming as well, and then of course Bob's on it on bass in areas, and then some of the others as well. Were there any of these performances as such that when you came to make your own version of them that you're like, wow, Eric did that in 1981 or Paul did that, that really then jumped out at you and gave you a new appreciation?
Yeah, I think overall they're doing the best job in many ways. I love what Paul's been doing, playing the solo on A World Without Heroes. I think he had a taste already at his 78 solo album with Hold Me, Touch Me. He did a nice solo on that one, and he brought a lot of that kind of texture and melodies into the solo of A World Without Heroes. Ace riffing is always cool, and it's really hard trying to make anything out of such a cool song. It has such swagger, a song like Dark Light. It's really, really hard, because he has a cool sloppiness to the way he plays the riff, and it's really hard to recreate that. If I play it like him, it will only sound sloppy, but he does it in a cool, swaggery way. So I had to be a bit more, choppy with it and more trying to be more precise with it. But I have the utmost respect for all of them. I think everything from the songwriting to the performance impresses me, and I think I wish that people could understand how different this album is and how much harder it is to write songs like Just a Boy than Strutter. And I love Strutter, but from a composer's point of view, they're fairly complex, the songs on The Elder.
Yeah, they're complex in terms of composition, in terms of everything that then Bob brings into the songcrafting, because Bob remains a genius and no matter what was a massive part of the crafting of the arrangements of those songs. But the performance, I mean, Paul Stanley is no slouch as a guitarist, and you rightfully point out some of his beautiful lead work. He knows exactly what to play in the right case, and you also are absolutely right about Ace. How do you replicate swagger without it sounding calculated or forced? Because swagger is natural X factor, like gravity. You just can't wrap yourself around that. So the vocals were always one area that I am particularly impressed by what Paul Stanley did, and the bravery. It's why he'll always be my most valuable player of this album, with his bravery of going falsetto and singing in operatic or cinematic styles for the material. How did you approach those vocals? Because that's got to be a massive challenge for anyone.
Yeah, well, this is the only, like I said, behind the scenes clips. It's actually the only album where I can reach all the notes that he sings, Paul, because he has a high tenor voice normally, and he sings really, really high pitched notes on every album. But on this album, the highest notes he takes in falsetto, so I can reach them, which, thanks. That's good for me. It's impossible to recreate for me an album like Revenge or the 80s. It's just ridiculous on songs like Turn on the Night. They're so high pitched, so no way I could sing anything like that. But as you say, I think he was very brave. I know that he was kind of insecure with some of his performances, and I think he should be proud of them. Going into that. It's tough doing it. I think I have the utmost respect for everything that he did, and I know I can never be a Paul Stanley vocal wise, but this is my version, and I have to do it with my voice, but also pay a little tribute to the original. So it's a fine line. I have no good answer, really. I think Odyssey is probably where I took a little bit more liberty being myself more than actually being singing it the way that Paul did, because Paul did it like he knew that someday I'll be singing Phantom of the Opera, you know? And I think he does it so good, but I could never do a good version of Paul doing the opera version, you know? That would be like third generation
operatic. Yeah.
Operatic, yeah.
Yeah, he calls his performance on Odyssey tragic. I am offended by that because I think he does a absolutely fantastic job of singing that. And again, it comes back to the bravery at a time of, going that style. Here you are doing one style on Just a Boy. You have a couple of standard-ish rock songs. Well, The Oath mixes standard rock singing with some falsetto as well.
Yeah.
So he's really measuring himself against some very dynamic singers at the time. Freddie Mercury comes automatically to mind in some of the styles that he was willing to tackle, especially the operatic style mixed with rock. But here you are, doing similar. So respect to you for taking on that challenge, because it's not easy.
I think that the hardest part is probably knowing how much you can change the song or implement your own style to it, because you, as I said, you want to respect the originals as much as possible and not stray away too much from that. On the other hand, there's no point in me trying to be, a 2-cent Paul Stanley or a bad version of the original. So, but it's tough. It's tricky. I hope people accept what we've done. This is
don't undersell yourself. Don't undersell yourself, because again, this is a tribute to music from the Elder. If people want to listen to the Elder, it's been available for 40 years. Go listen to the Elder first, and then line up Ancient Door, a tribute to the Elder, and take them as separate but equal in terms of the craft and the passion and the attention to detail that's gone into both. So you're very much the equal in the creative element. So don't undersell yourself.
I'm pretty sure I had a better time recording my version than the guys had back in '81.
Yeah, I think that goes without a doubt. One of my favorites.
Sorry, I have a little question for you. Because one thing that I've always been thinking about is that it's a well-known fact that when Bob did Destroyer, he actually recorded the album with all the effects on it, reverbs and all that stuff. So when they did the remixes for Double Platinum, they couldn't really do much with it because everything, the echoes and everything, was on the track. Do you know how we did it with the Elder? If you took the original reels, would it all be there? Would the reverb on Only You be there?
I don't have an answer for that. I know they ran out of tracks and had to do bounce downs, and that's what resulted in that. And I don't know if the originals were retained or lost or discarded as part of that process. And I don't know either. That would be a great question for Bob. But on the Elder, I would think he would still be operating on a very similar kind of method. But technology in those 5 years had also advanced quite a lot as well. It'd be interesting to hear, if someone, say, has the multi-tracks, the original 2-inch tapes for, say, Mr. Blackwell, which I know are out there. It'd be fascinating to know what are on those individual tracks.
Yeah.
So again, that's a great question. And again, we are never going to be done learning more about the music of Kiss and Kiss's history, and whether it's their calendars and what they were doing from day to day, or photographs, or the music and the recording. There is always going to be more to discover. Or someone who pops up and says, oh, look at here's a 2-inch tape for Odyssey with Gene's vocal. So I think that's a great way. You don't have to do that now with digital.
No.
You want another you need another track. Track. Where do you want to? You just don't
the
have
limits. Is 1,000. I just learned. Never used 1,000, but I know the limits.
Just imagine if the Beatles had 1,000 tracks, or George Martin had 1,000 tracks available to him.
We would probably only get one album because they would never be done. There will always be something more to add to a song, you know.
Just adding another layer until so much is buried underneath. You know, it now becomes a matter of self-restraint and limiting the use of those tracks to where they have to be. But great question of your own about Bob Ezrin. And again, this is all what makes him just absolutely brilliant in a lot of the producers as well of the age who did amazing things with limited technology. One of my favorite of your behind the scenes videos is part 4. And that's where the drumming and percussion of Darklight is discussed. You know, first of all, great job on that. Were all the drums and percussion on this album real, or did you go electronic on that? When you see timpani, when you see Jolene behind the kit, it kind of points to that organic drum. But did you have to do any?
It's a mix of everything. Because of her bad back, we had to re-trigger, as you say, some of the stuff that she recorded. So she played on the songs, but if I wanted to redo, say, a small bit of Mr. Blackwell, and then I could use an earlier part or another different take and just cut that out and move it to where I need to have it, and then I re-triggered, or she re-triggered, so you can have a totally different snare sound or a different kick. So it's a mixture. We live in that era now where I don't think that anything's 100% acoustically acoustic on the album. No, I don't think so. Probably Just the Boy is pretty acoustic, but I think we re-triggered the snare, so we had two sounds of snares mixed together. So it's a bit of everything. When it comes to the timpani and all the percussion, that's live. Because she, at the time, because they were recorded back in 2016. At the time, she was teaching at the music high school as a percussion and drum and recording engineer teacher at the music high school here in Karlstad, Sweden. So we had all these instruments at her job. So we went there one day and recorded, timpanis and shakers and gongs and all that. So you see some of them in the behind the scenes video. I think the gongs in there somewhere, and the big drums for I and the timpani. And so that's all Jolene. Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. I haven't touched on a couple of songs. I have some notes on. I did pick out some notes. I mean, I was only able to say one word about A World Without Arrows. Absolutely gorgeous. That's 2 words. I've added the absolutely just now. Darklight. Again, I just talked about that briefly, but this one screams fun. Was it as fun to create that as it sounds on your album?
Yeah, they were all fun. Yeah, it was. As I said, I struggled a bit in the beginning on how to approach the guitar playing. I wanted the swagger that Ace always brings to his songs and his riffs, but I couldn't really reproduce that. So I had to do it in my own way, trying to keep all that's good from the original on that one. Also, we toyed around, like the first bridge or musical bridge after the first chorus. We have some new elements where we play a version of the riff on multiple single string guitars, kind of like I would say Brian May would have done it, maybe. They play with harmonies on, I think, 6 guitars added, and then underneath that putting power chords. So kind of a new approach to that, and also the song has a new ending because I wanted to end the song on a D instead of the just fading out on the G riff. So I changed the ending so it could end on a D because it naturally glides over to the orchestral intro in D minor, going over to E minor, and going into a world without heroes. So there was a bit of planning to make the tracks go together and then fit together like a story, and musically also be in the right key when you had to do the progression to the next song. So.
See, that's a fascinating technical detail that defines the roadmap that you're following. The music is clearly, and what you're hearing in the music is what's taking you in a direction of, adjusting things where you need to for your interpretation to make the transition seamless. And again, I think, I've had 5 listens of the album so far, and that's not enough to even halfway start digging into appreciating it fully. Only you, the bass. I love the bass that you've recorded on there, and the effects on the vocals. That's another one of the ones that jump out at me. Mr. Blackwell. Let's talk about Mr. Blackwell on its own, because again, that's got all these different dynamic elements: mood, attitude, kind of fear, danger.
Once again, I wanted to tie it in with Bob's work on Destroyer, and I always thought that Mr. Blackwell, the song, is kind of a sibling to God of Thunder.
Same notes.
So I added some weird background noises, kids screaming, infants in this case, just to get kind of a God of Thunderish feel to it. We also simplified a bit of the hi-hat playing on the drums, and tried to boost the riff in the last verse by overdubbing the basic rhythm with big guitars. So yeah, a lot of work into that too. But I think probably of the songs on the album, I like what we did. The change on that song is what I like most. But I think that was the best change of song that we did on the album, if you know what I mean.
Well, you did some backwards guitar as well, didn't you, for that, in order to set the atmosphere or help set it. So, again, just all in all, again, I can't strongly recommend this enough, because it's just so refreshing as we celebrate the 40th anniversary. Who were some of the other people that helped you out with this project? Because you do have some other folk who've, number one, glorious artwork, by the way.
Yeah.
And packaging.
It's a German artist that I found. And what we basically did 99% of the stuff ourselves. We thank a few people. My father, he's the hand on the back of the cover, holding the door. That's my father.
There it is. You can just, there you go.
It's actually from the church of my hometown. We took that picture. And also there's a name there that I want to mention, and that's Per Forsberg, which has a Kiss tie-in, which is pretty fun. He plays tuba for the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra, and he's from the same town as me. We're childhood friends. So he played on the Kiss Symphony sessions.
Hey. Oh, wow.
Yeah. So he's a Swedish guy that actually played with Kiss, which is pretty cool. So I asked him if he wanted to be a part of this album. He said, sure. And one day, suddenly, I got some files with him and some friends from the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra toying and playing Fanfare. They recorded something totally different, and said, we have 15 minutes. Well, can't we record this for my friend in Sweden? So they recorded it. Now we went with the other approach of that song with Fanfare, with the trailer approach. So we didn't use it, but I think it was very, very sweet of him to do that, and appreciate it. And it's cool because he played with Kiss. So I would have loved to have him on the album. Unfortunately, there was no room this time, but maybe next time when we do the 50-year anniversary version.
Bonus track.
But yeah,
No, I mean, what better thing than to someone who's got, obviously, the only time Kiss performed live with a symphony was with the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra for Kiss Symphony in 2003. That's absolutely amazing. I mean, right now it's physical only. Do you have any plans for digital, or even to take that massive step into vinyl land?
I looked into vinyl land, and the way I think it has to do with the raw material of pressing vinyl now. There's a shortage of, apparently, I don't know. They told me that the fastest they could do a vinyl record was 28 weeks, and I didn't want to make a 41-year anniversary record, so I had to go with CD. But the idea was there from the start to do a limited number of vinyl albums, but couldn't do that this year. So, and someday we'll put it out on streaming platforms. But for now, I think it's kind of cool that it's an actual album. I'm an old timer. I want to make albums.
You get to hold it. You get to open it. You get to, there's something still special about physical product versus streaming.
Yeah, definitely. So
not least the sound quality is as it should be, rather than streaming quality, even though there is very close to perfect. Where can people find you for more information about the album and where to obtain it? You're on Facebook, aren't you? I'll provide.
Yeah, we're on Facebook. If you visit our page, Ancient Door Project, you can order and you can watch all those clips that you talked about behind the scenes. We're also working on a video right now, which hopefully will be done in sometime next week, I hope. So we'll release that. If you're not on Facebook, because we don't have a web page for this, actually, because we never thought that it would come to this. We thought, okay, I'll record this. I want an album for myself. I never thought that anyone else in the world would ever care about this. So we're kind of dumbstruck with that. So, but you can write to us at chris@fullnoteproductions.com. Send us an email and we'll help you if you want a copy of the album. But Facebook is our primary point of where you can find most of the things that we do. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, the Facebook site can't be mentioned not enough, because again, all those background videos about the project, I think, give people a very good taste of the detail and the attention that went into making and creating and crafting this incredible tribute. My final question, Christopher, is did creating and recording this tribute give you a new respect or love for the Elder? Has it changed any of your perceptions that you had before, or has it just simply reinforced why you like that album?
I think a little bit both. I think I knew it was a fantastic album. I knew that it was special, and the songwriting was excellent and advanced. But going into it, like you mentioned earlier, realizing how good the craftsmanship and the playing on that album is, and how well it's arranged, has given me all the respect in the world for Bob and the band. I think the album, for me, I love the album even more. I didn't think that was possible. I probably listened to the album 200 times a year, but now I listen to it 400 times a year almost, I guess. I love it. And I just want to point out that I love the original, and this is a tribute to the original. If our version can help a few new souls discover what a great album this is, I hope they go and buy 200 copies of the original. Maybe we could get it up to platinum one day, if Paul and Gene ever would consider,
It would be nice just to have it gold and have that gap filled in their catalog, for sequential
probably
albums.
It's gold, isn't it? It should be gold.
It seems to forever have teetered on the brink of being that, but I've never seen enough sales figure to really tell me if it actually is. But who knows? And I'm going to give the final space of this episode to you. Where else have you been interviewed? Because I'm sure they've handled, talking to you differently. Where else can people watch to find out even more about this project? I think you were on Cameron's podcast as well. Where else have you been reached so far, so that people can also check out those shows?
Well, I've talked to Cameron and live unplugged sessions, I think you called, and also, but that's in Swedish, which I guess all your viewers are not fluent in Swedish, but all those clips we put them on our Facebook page. I think that's the easiest way. Go into our Facebook page and you can see all our videos and all our podcasts that we've done. I think that's the easiest way.
Okay. Well, that is it. I do appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today. This is another illustration of why the Scandinavian Kiss Army are some of the best fans in the world, with the passion and dedication that seems to originate from your part of the world. I look at our podcast stats. Scandinavia is always number 1 or number 2 in terms of viewers and support. And then you see some of the really cool projects that come out of that area, some of the fan passion of things that are being shared. We're very grateful for you and the people from your area who are giving us so much as fans to enjoy, or at least to think about again, to reevaluate what we've thought in the past. So Christopher, thank you very much for joining me today, and I wish you all the best with Ancient Door, a tribute to music from the Elder. Happy NovElder, everyone. Thank you for spending time listening to the KissFAQ podcast today. All sales are final, there are no refunds. If you'd like, look us up on Facebook or come over to the KissFAQ message board and discuss the topic we've broadcast today. Don't forget to rate us on iTunes, Spreaker, or wherever you've listened to the show. We hope you'll join us again.